Hey students, today we are going to talk about conclusion paragraphs. So go ahead and pay attention. Hopefully you've watched the introduction paragraphs at this point in time, and what I'm going to be doing is just adding on to how to finish a paragraph. So to fully understand how to write a conclusion, you need to understand what an introduction looks like. I'm not going to take a ton of time to review this because you already know it, but you've got your hook, which goes from a super broad topic. It narrows down into the transition, and then it gets to the point of the entire essay, the thesis statement. So literally the point, right? This is everything that our essay is going to focus on. So you need to understand what the function of a body of introduction paragraph looks like, because a conclusion paragraph is the inversion of an introduction paragraph. Where the introduction paragraph goes from super broad to specific, the conclusion paragraph does the opposite, where it goes from specific, where you're reviewing the thesis statement and the points that you've made in your body paragraphs. You go into a transition, and it's kind of this big so what statement. How does this have to do with me as the reader? How does this, anything that you talked about in your essay, apply to real life, or challenge something that I know? So I'm going to read the introduction paragraph that I used in the last video so that you can see how these two things kind of work together. So this one is talking about love, right? So it says, romance, adultery, divorce, children are splashed upon the pages of People and Us magazine, on tabloids, gossip columns, and social media sites. Miley Cyrus and Liam Hemsworth married and divorced. Meghan Markle and Prince Harry slammed the royal family for not accepting their child. It's the Taylor Swift songs played on the radio as boys and girls cry their hearts out because Swift just gets it. It's the movies watched over tubs of ice cream by piles of snot-filled tissues reminding dumped individuals that hope is out there. It's the ups and downs of love humanity simultaneously longs for and wishes they'd never encountered. Almost every source of media seems to affirm the drama involved with love and questions whether or not the risk is worth it. This question, though it seems modern, isn't foreign to history but is talked about in books that predate gossip columns and social media. Jazz age author and romantic F. Scott Fitzgerald personally struggled with his own love life, and even put some of those struggles into his most famous novel. In his novel, The Great Gatsby, Fitzgerald wrestles with whether true sacrificial love can exist romantically or just through the love of friends, as seen most clearly through Jay Gatsby's relationship with Daisy Buchanan and Nick Carraway. So that's my introduction paragraph. My conclusion paragraph looks like this. It's a little bit bigger because there's a little bit more to cover. Rather than just talking about the thesis statement, we now need to explain, right, how that played itself out in the essay. So I'm going to read this out loud, and then I will talk how it breaks down, okay? So I want you to notice first and foremost the bolded words on the introduction. So you got tabloids, gossip columns, social media sites, everything over here. Listen to and look for those words or those ideas, because they are going to be repeated in the conclusion that I'm about to read. Here we go. The Great Gatsby shows its readers the treacheries of superficial love. Gatsby worked tirelessly for 5 years to earn money and respect within the wealthy community, to win the love of Daisy Buchanan, a woman who could never return or come close to returning the sacrificial to the end of time kind of love. She was too concerned with her own status and comfort to risk anything for him. So first of all, in this conclusion, I have now talked about and reviewed what I promised I would review in the thesis statement. So if you notice, the thesis statement says that the first thing I'm going to talk about is Daisy Buchanan. That means that my first body paragraph of my essay analyzed Gatsby's relationship with Daisy Buchanan. That also means that in my conclusion, because I am reviewing my thesis statement and all of the points that I've made, the first thing that I need to review is the first thing that popped up in my essay, which is Daisy Buchanan. So here I am reviewing the answer to the question I posed in the thesis statement, which is, if you look down here, sacrificial love can exist romantically or just through love of friends. So here I say it can't exist romantically in Fitzgerald's world because Daisy, if you look at this last sentence, she was too concerned with her own status and comfort to risk anything for him. So all of this was talked about in the first body paragraph, but now I am just rephrasing it to remind the reader. So, assumingly, if I'm doing this correctly, the second chunk of this yellow part of the conclusion, which is connected to my thesis statement, is going to talk about Nick Carraway. So, listen. However, The love between friends seen between Gatsby and Caraway lasted all of the tests. Poor upbringing, shameful past, criminal activity, murder, and death. It was unmotivated by wealth, impression, or something as fickle as a crush. Gatsby was able to be his full self, share his full story, and still be loved by Nick. It lasted because the relationship, this love, was mutual and always focused on the other person, not just what on the other person could offer them. So again, you see in this second half, I am now talking and reviewing what I would have talked about in my second body paragraph, what I promised to talk about in my thesis statement of Nick Carraway and why that love has lasted. It's because it was mutual and it was focused on the other person. So now it's time to get a little bit more narrow. Now I've reviewed what I've talked about very specifically in my essay, and now I'm going to expand that. Now I'm going to expand that and reuse the words of my hook. So look at the orange in my introduction and look at the orange in the conclusion. Rarely does one find this kind of love, splashed on the tabloids, news outlets, or social media. It is far less sparkly and captivating than the drama of romance. It is stable, it is mundane, and it's something that at the end of the day, man wishes for because it lasts. So I've recycled a lot of the language that was used here and I've made it here. Again, you want to make this whole essay seem cohesive. The best that you can do that is by using the same language, using the imagery of the hook that you put in your introduction in the conclusion paragraph. The only thing that is added is the kind of bigger so what statement. How does this challenge an idea that I've commonly accepted, or how does this apply to me and humanity at large? And here we go with this. Yes, The Great Gatsby is an American tragedy for many reasons, primarily the dramatic irony of Gatsby never accomplishing his dream due to societal pressure. So I'm saying essentially, yes, I agree. Gatsby is an American tragedy. But now I'm going to challenge that, okay? But it is only a tragedy if we forget the bond between Nick and Gatsby. Gatsby earned the rare treasure of far more worth than an unstable relationship or status. He earned a true friend. And there is my so what statement. So if you notice, again, it goes from introduction, broad, narrowing to thesis, and then it talks specifically about thesis, broad, bigger idea, and conclusion. So again, it's an inversion of one another. So real quick, just as a review, the conclusion, the first part is you are reviewing. You are reworking your thesis statement and you are reminding the main points of body paragraph 1 and body paragraph 2. Don't just copy and paste parts of your essay into the conclusion. Truly, rephrase it, summarize the main points that you went through. This is a great time, and I want you guys to view this as if it's kind of like a final speech or your closing argument in a court case. You are standing before the judge, you are standing before the jury, which is the reader, and you are having one shot at saying, I am right, and let me prove that I'm right. Use pathos, use that big language to really kind of motivate and inspire the reader and the audience to buy into your idea, because this is the last chance that you have to really kind of bring it home. Part 2 is the transition, where you are using the same language of the hook into this conclusion paragraph, right? You want to make it cohesive. Your introduction and your conclusion serve as bookends, right? And so again, if you don't recycle the language of the hook, then it doesn't have this kind of unified conclusion at the end. And then finally, the so what. Now, this is the hardest part, I think, for a lot of students, because you really have to figure out, like, why does this apply? Why should my reader care? And there's three common ways that you can do this. The first is you turn something on its head, and this is what I did in this instance. You take something that is commonly accepted, an idea that's commonly accepted. So in this case, that The Great Gatsby is an American tragedy, right? This is a tragic novel because our favorite character, the one who had hope, died. And so you can take something like that and then say, but is it really a tragedy? And then provide a reason why maybe it can be viewed not as a tragedy. And in this case, it was, if we forget about the relationship between Nick and Gatsby, then of course it's a tragedy, but Gatsby had a true friend that genuinely loved him. So you could do that. The second is probably the most common one, where you're taking the larger concept that you're talking about, wealth, hope, love, money, friendship, fate versus free will, anything that you would talk about, and you are applying it to human nature or society, right? You can ask a rhetorical question. Um, did Fitzgerald just have a skewed view of love? Does romantic sacrificial love truly exist for humanity, or something along those lines? This is probably the easier question that you're going to be able, the easier one that you'll be able to do. And then this one is a little bit more specific. This one takes a lot of focus while you're reading the book. But you can end with a poignant or impactful quote from the novel as a challenge. So, can the reader truly say, along with Fitzgerald, that the American people are boats that beat against the current, borne back ceaselessly into the past? Question mark. That's probably not the best quote that you could use, but you're taking a quote that deals with a concept from your essay that is in the book, that really challenges, can we agree with Fitzgerald on this? And with that, that brings us to an end of our conclusion review.